When you look at Allah, He is infinite. Every aspect of Him is infinite. His knowledge is infinite. Everything regarding Him is infinite. How can you understand Allah through the intellect? You can't. Brothers, you can't. In Aqaid, there is no proof of what Allah is. In Aqaid, there's only proof that Allah is, not what is He. In Aqaid, look at all the books of Aqaid. No one goes to say that, this is who Allah is, this is what Allah is. No one says that. All Aqaid books are geared towards proving the existence of Allah, not defining Allah. You can't define Allah. Because you can only define things that have parameters, that have boundaries. And Allah has no hudud, no boundaries, and hence you can't define Him with the aql. You can only imagine Him. You can only comprehend Him through imagination. And that's why it's so important for us to understand that we have a power that's called imagination. People who make their power of imagination stronger, you will see, will be able to understand certain concepts that very intelligent people cannot. That's why you have very educated and intelligent people who are unable to fathom the idea of God. Because how can you have an infinite God? It doesn't make sense to have an infinite God. Why can't we have why can't we? Because it doesn't make sense. There is no logic behind it. But the issue is that, why are you looking at it like that? See from the point of view of your imagination, which is also a faculty that you have. Why can't you use that? Because here's why. When we were told to encourage children to use their imagination, it was to encourage them to use it. But what we end up doing is that we end up discouraging them to use imagination. Any child that uses his imagination, for example, someone who has an artistic side to him. You see a child that is very artistic, he thinks in an artistic way, thinks in an ambiguous way. So what happens is that people who think intellectually think that he is weird. He is not right. Something is wrong with him. He can't think straight. Why can't he? He's thinking perfectly. It's you who cannot understand his thinking. You can't understand his thinking. He is thinking perfectly, exactly the way he should be thinking, but you are unable to comprehend the way he's using his mind. And then what happened is that we then put that child through scrutiny, through hell in school, by putting him through counseling, through all these things, just because these idiots who are in charge of the school are unable to understand the child and how he thinks. This is what happens. And we in Islam are encouraged to say that, listen, when a child is using his imagination, encourage him to do so. Why? Because the concepts of faith are going to be understood only through imagination. Yes, my friends. One of the things that we understand, as I said, Allah is understood through imagination. That's what He's understood through. When you don't use your imagination and power of imagination, you can't understand Allah. You have doubts then. If you try to intellectualize them, you have doubts about Allah. That's why many youngsters here have doubts, because when professors who don't know how to think straight raise issues regarding God and the infinite nature of God, they say, well, how can there be an infinite God? Just because you don't understand it doesn't mean that there isn't. And how are you looking at Him? You're looking at Him from the microscope of your intellect. Why can't you just see Him from the lens of your imagination? This is a power that we all have. And that's where you see articles of faith are understood through imagination. They are comprehended by that. Allah's greatness is understood through that. And that is important for us to understand. And the reason I raise this, because when we are talking about life, my friends, Life is understood and comprehended through imagination, through the power of imagination. If you cannot use your imagination, you will not understand life. And you can't understand life, you're not living it. You are just waiting for it to end so that this torture can end. That's all it is. And that's where we need to start to learn that why am I not using my imagination? Why am I not using my imagination? Oh, it's fantasy, Maulana, it's not real life. We want to read books of facts, not fiction. We just want to concentrate on things that are straightforward and can be analyzed under a microscope and dissected and looked at. Not something hocus pocus. The idea is that when you look at imagination, and you look at the power that you have, what is it for then? Is this faculty just in there by accident? Oh, we all have imagination. Why did we get it? Manufacturing defect. It's not a manufacturing defect. It's there for a purpose. It's there for a reason. And when we stop using this power of imagination, that's where we start to limit ourselves. And then we start becoming those doubtful, cynical people who, when you hear certain things regarding this, you start to become doubtful and never understand concepts. We want to understand life. Life is understood through imagination. Tomorrow I will go into it deeply and explain to you how this works. And inshallah, we will stop it here. I'll end it here. So if there's any questions you want to ask, go ahead. I'll answer some questions before we end. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so isn't imagination a infinite thing?
No. See, imagination is meant, it's a thing that we all have. We all can imagine. For example, let's say if I ask you, think about it. So what that means is that try to decipher it or simplify it or expand it. But if I tell you to imagine it, would that be asking something different? Right. You see that, the difference between thinking and imagining. I think I can intellectualize how a train runs. But people, if you look at it, right, really, people who use the power of imagination are always the ones who discover things. People who use intellect, they're very good scientists in the lab where they do research on other people's work. But people who use imagination are the ones who always create things, discover things for others.
Just to follow up on that, would you say that imagination potentially is even a higher form of intellect? Because I think people,
Okay.
there are scientists that have imagined things and then found them, right, through their...
Right. Okay, no, right? The issue is this, right? It's a different power that we have, right? What is intellect, right, or reasoning? Reasoning is, again, in short and in brief, it is the ability to put together what you know to find out things that you don't know. That's what it is. The ability where you can take ideas that you know and you can put them together to find out something that you don't know. For example, A equals B and B equals C. So you say A is equal to B and B is equal to C. So, okay, I can put these two things together and say that A is equal to C then. How did I come with that? Intellect. I can use a premise that I have, use that premise to reach something that was unknown to me. Is intellect. Right? No, we're not talking about that. What we're talking about is that not having any premise and not having any proof and thinking and then trying to go to the unknown. without having any proof or without having any premise behind it. You see, we need power for that. For example, if I told you to think about Jannat, and Allah says it, right, in the Quran, so many places He uses description of Jannat, He uses description of Jahannam, heaven and hell. But when you look at those descriptions, tell me, how many of you can actually intellectualize it and say, okay, Allah is trying to give you or describe to you something that is completely unknown to you. Let me make it simple for you, right? Have you ever eaten a sitafal?
Yeah.
Okay. Youngsters, I'm asking. I know these guys are from India. Have you ever eaten, for example, okay, a kuhu? Have you ever eaten a kuhu? No, right? You have never eaten a kuhu, right? Now, let's say you have never eaten a kuhu and never seen one also, and you can Google it up, later. But still, Google can show you a picture, and I can tell you, hey, listen, kuhu tastes like a mango, right? It tastes like a mango. Now, no matter how much I describe it and how eloquently I describe it, can you get the exact taste? You can't. So, what am I appealing to? Am I appealing to your intellect or your imagination? No, not intellect. There's no intellect in here. What intellect are you using? I'm just saying that it's like a mango. Okay? But is it a mango? No, it's not. But it's like one. Okay. See, now this idea that you have, did you get it by deducting it or did you get it by using the power of imagination? An idea that you have. This is imagination. This ability for you to know the unknown without having any premise. Intellect can only use what is known to reach the unknown. That's why we can use creation to reach the Creator, to know that He is there. But can you deduct what He is?
No.
You can't. The only thing that helps you to understand Allah is imagination. That you can have an idea that you can believe in. That's why faith is really ideas that we have found through our imagination. It becomes real for us. And that's where you see we put our faith in. Imagination is important. It's an important aspect of our life that we and the whole society discourages us to use. And Islam is encouraging us. Use your imagination. Use it as much as you can. Why? Because it is what makes you start becoming a believer. And the reason I'm discussing this is because we want to learn about life. You will see that in order to understand life, imagination plays a huge role in knowing what life is. All right, very good. So inshallah, we will end here.